Hello, everybody. My name is Jimmy Smith, and welcome to the Wine with Jimmy YouTube channel. We have got a presentation here on WSET Level 3, the growing environment, looking at water. This is two parts. Water will be split into two parts. So this is part one, and this has been looking about what a vine needs, rainfall, and irrigation. The second part will be looking at water hazards, and that will only be available to the members of my e-learning portal at winewithjimmy.com, where you'll find a really user-friendly and wonderful e-learning portal for the WSET courses, level 1 through to 4, with plenty of things like revision sessions, flashcards, short written answer questions and answers, multiple choice, and then of course a huge volume of video content, nearly 3 times the amount of what you would have on YouTube as free content. But for now, you can enjoy this. If you have any comments, questions or concerns, please do drop a comment in the comments box below this video, and make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, you can get in touch via the social media at the bottom of each slide, or you can get in touch via the Wine with Jimmy website, www.winewithjimmy.com. Okay, so let's rock and roll for looking about water. Wonderful picture, could be in England, to be honest, with vineyards there, nice green grass, but then those dull grey skies with drizzle in the air. And that's why we're looking at this. We're talking about water on this section, not the longest of videos. So water, the vine will require water to survive, like all living things, and it needs water for photosynthesis. So it will specifically need the hydrogen component of water, certainly then to create glucose, a more complex molecule chain of glucose, but also for the whole growth of the vine, and of course then for producing oxygen as well. So it's needed for that photosynthesis, the growth of the vine, and also to swell the grapes during ripening. So if we didn't have water at that point during the ripening stage, they would start to desiccate, they would start to shrivel up. And as a problem with that would mean that they would drastically reduce in a number of things like acidities, for instance, and they wouldn't be as balanced as we know they are today. So we need them to swell the grapes during ripening, but of course not too much is the key thing, because we need to keep that in balance as well. But we need to talk about how the vine processes water. So that's our next little slide. So you'll see here that here's a little diagram on transpiration. So what we need to understand is the vine accesses water through its root systems, as you'll see at the bottom here of our slide. Let me get my little arrow out again. I always like to use my arrows. So here we go. That's just pinpointed at the bottom here from the soil where our root system network is found, and water will be absorbed by the roots, of course. And then that is drawn up through the vine, as it says here, that bluish arrow indicating that, and then is up through the leaves, where it goes through transpiration through the leaves. The amount of water a vine will need is determined by the temperature. So, for example, as it gets warmer, water evaporates from the vine's leaves at a much faster rate. And this means that the vines need to take up more water from the soil, from the root systems, and that's to compensate for that water that's transpirating. Okay, so that means that it will be taking up more through the root systems, and then those root systems which are much more developed with a better network will have that availability to do that. So that's transpiration. Also, when the vine starts to grow, of course, we create a more structured plant. So it starts to grow very embryonic stages from a bud, with its leaves, with its stalk, and then eventually its flowers, its tendrils. But eventually it will create a canopy. That is a covering of leaf cover, and that creates a lot of things. It's very important for photosynthesis, for capturing the energy of sunlight for the growth of the vine. Of course, it's a big surface area for absorbing that. But in terms of water, we need to understand that we need to talk about the water in terms of how much we need for the vine to grow and for grape production as well. So once a sufficient canopy of leaves has grown, it will start to you'd start to hope to limit the amount of water that the grape gets. And in fact, limiting the amount of water it can get is actually beneficial for quality grape production. Okay, so in these conditions, the vine has enough water to keep photosynthesis going, but the shortage of water means that the vine has to concentrate on grape ripening rather than further shoot growth. So, of course, really early stages of the vine's development per year is growth. And that's when we're in spring, coming into early summer, and generally there's quite an availability of water, and the vine is growing quite well. So, of course, lots of shoot growth, like I mentioned earlier, lots of leaves, lots of shoots, lots of inflorescence, lots of tendrils, and it's creating a form. It's creating a vine form. So it becomes quite structured and it gains quite a big canopy. But then you want to switch the vine's thinking from not concentrating purely on growth, but switching it to actually producing glucose in the grapes themselves. So that's where shortening of the water supply is quite important. So bringing it down, and of course the season should do that. The season should do that due to the fact, of course, you're coming into summer, August and September, where it's much drier. So the vine does switch from growing into producing grapes. So you've got to keep it a little bit, treat it mean, keep it keen with the vine to produce those grape sugars, of course. And also, this has the added advantage of reducing the impact of shading. Now, this is not always a positive. It depends on where you are in the world. So the canopy doesn't grow too large. And certainly in cooler places and more humid and damp places, this is a benefit where you are reducing the amount of canopy being produced. That canopy could produce more shading, which could lead to more disease pressure, more fungal mildew rots, etc. Okay, so that's the canopy looked at. Next up then, just talking more about rainfall, of course. Rainfall, of course, is the most important source of water. It is our natural source of water. And we normally would hope that it will be the right amount per annum for the vine. But of course, that is not always the case. There can be excesses of rainfall, and of course, there can be insufficient needs of rainfall. Excessive rainfall, of course, will create issues such as flooding, damp conditions, which could lead to things like mildew and rot and higher disease pressure. But insufficient amount of rainfall, so a lack of rainfall, means that you may need to supplement it if it is possible, if you are in an area which allows for irrigation. Some areas are not permitted for irrigation. It is not always the case every year. There may be exceptions, but there are some quite structured rules, certainly in Europe, around irrigation and the amount that you can do of it. Okay, so if there is a lack of rainfall, of course, we can irrigate, and we have 3 major forms of irrigation that WSET would like you to understand about the level 3 certificate. So first up is what we call is drip irrigation. So this is definitely the most advanced of the irrigating techniques, but it is also the most expensive because, of course, you need quite a sophisticated system in place with a lot of this piping that you can see, which runs across all the rows of vines, or at least where you want to control the irrigation, maybe in areas that you know will need irrigation, on a consistent basis. And that will need to be controlled by a computer system. And it's quite expensive, of course, therefore. But it means that each vine has its own dripper on that piped network. And that means that it ensures that each vine will get the optimum amount of water. So it's a very sophisticated and very consistent way of gaining water. There can be a negative. There can be too much of a consistent supply of water to the soil, which it drips down onto, which could mean that certain pests like nematodes could sort of benefit from that. They like very consistent conditions, for instance. So that does have to be taken into consideration. Then we have the sprinkler systems, which of course is quite obvious, very widely used and cheaper, of course, than drip irrigation. But the issue is that it's not that controlled. So you spray it everywhere. And of course, that means there could be quite a lot of waste. And also, like rainfall, because in a way it's acting a little bit like rainfall, it can create an environment which is a bit damper. And that means, of course, you can inadvertently promote things like disease pressure, mildew, and rot. So that can be a little bit of an issue. But if they are correctly designed, you can tie them in to the frost prevention techniques, which also need to use sprinkling or can use sprinkling, and that is to combat spring frosts by sprinkling water, and through the process of aspersion, it releases latent heat and keeps the bud above zero, stopping it from freezing. Please have a look at our heat sections, the growing environment and heat, for more information on that. Okay, so sprinkler systems. Then we have flood irrigation as our final slide. Now, this is definitely the cheapest to use, very cheap, because really what you require are some ditches to be dug. Here's some quite wide ones here. They seem to be quite consistent, these ones, but they don't tend to be every row. But you will find that you just need to dig some ditches. You could have a tractor do this. You can have a digger that does this as well. But it's only really possible on vineyards where the machinery are available. So things like flat vineyards or gentle sloping vineyards. And also, if it was on a slope, the water will run off, of course. So you'll need to be on slope, gentle slopes or flat vineyards. And you'll also need to have an availability of water. You need to be able to tap in to potentially natural water, streams and rivers and mountain water runoff. So that's possible. Quite a big thing in places like Argentina and Chile, which have quite an availability of water through rivers and streams from the Andes. Lots of it rains on the Andes, and of course some of it melts from the ice, some of it filters down and then comes into the valleys that we know within the wine regions. So they can tap into that and then flood that into their vineyards if they need to. Okay, so that brings the first part of our growing environment talking about water to a conclusion. The next session, which is it's the final session of the water part of the growing environment, is looking at water hazards, of course, in excess or things like hail and so on. This is available only to members of the e-learning portal available at winewithjimmy.com. Please go across to the website to sign up. It's a very, very good investment for you. Lots of information there to help you gain confidence, to really go into your examination and knock it out of the park. So thank you so much. I've been Jimmy Smith of Wine with Jimmy. If you do have any comments, questions or concerns, please do get in touch via the comment section below this video on YouTube, or by the social media at the bottom of each slide, or by the website Wine with Jimmy. Otherwise, thank you so much. If you find yourself in London, come and see us for a class, a glass, or a bottle. Cheers. Thank you so much.